In less than a year, 90% of all computer code is going to be written by computers themselves.
What we are finding is we are not far from a world, I think we'll be there in 3 to 6 months, where AI is writing 90% of the code.
As predicted, 2025 is turning out to be the year of AI-powered agents, and Manus, which came out of China, has rocked the AI world yet again.
Kevin, is this another DeepSeek moment? Do I have to be, is it DeepSeek?
It's more like a wrapper for Claude, and we'll explain what that...
Sell!
Okay, we will explain what all of that means, don't worry. Plus, we're running down OpenAI's latest announcements, and Hedra released a new tool which lets you puppet AI characters. Also, checks notes, robots are running actual marathons now.
You know, Kevin, this look kind of works on me.
This is actually episode 100 of AI for Humans.
Kevin, there is big news afoot in the AI world.
The biggest news, Gavin, is that you don't know that I cooked a surprise for you last night in honor of episode 100.
Congratulations.
Baby.
What was
You're
it?
going to get to play it at the end of the show because I vibe coded something special for you.
That is amazing. I can't wait to try it. That is a genuine surprise. But first, Kevin, we do have to discuss kind of the biggest news of the week. And it starts with this really fascinating quote from Anthropic's Dario Amodei. Let's play that right now.
But now getting to kind of the job side of this, I do have a fair amount of concern about this. On one hand, I think comparative advantage is a very powerful tool. If I look at coding, programming, which is one area where AI is making the most progress, what we are finding is we are not far from a world, I think we'll be there in 3 to 6 months, where AI is writing 90% of the code. And then in 12 months, we may be in a world where AI is writing essentially all of the code.
Okay. So that's a year. That's fine.
That's a year.
A lot can happen in a year.
I want to start with this for a couple reasons, because we're going to get into all sorts of really interesting AI agent talk today. There's some big news out of China with Manus, their new AI agent, and OpenAI has released some agentic tools. But the reason I want to start with this, Kevin, is that it's a very important thing for our audience and the world at large to kind of understand this both speed and scale that this AI is getting to in this particular side of the world, of the business world. Because you know, for a long time, I actually just posted about this on my LinkedIn page, which is like, you know, the worst of the social networks, but I've been spending a fair amount of time there. There's a story in like the Wall Street Journal last week where tech parents who were originally pushing their kids into the tech world or into coding are now telling their kids to go into creative skill jobs because they believe that tech is going to change so much in the next little bit. And I only say that to kind of give that quote context, because to me, I heard that quote from Dario and it kind of still shocked me a little bit as somebody who spent a lot of time in this space. I don't know, what is your first reaction to that?
That it was less than a year ago, we were having an argument on this very podcast with Pirate Software, who graciously came on and guested and put his finger to the wind and said, there's no way that the machines will ever write code that will be deployable or good. And we, you know, kindly entertained that, but I think pushed back on that for good reason, because you tend to lose the never argument when it comes to arguing against what technology can do given enough time. And I think that we're here. I think that my anecdotal experience with this is that every month now, I unlock new capabilities by being able to just communicate using natural language with machines and ship useful tools and make proof of concepts. Or you and I have been working on something behind the scenes for a while now, and we're just shocked at how far it's come in just a short period of time. So yeah, I believe that a large percentage of code will be written by AI. Y Combinator, which is like a venture backed kind of company, basically they spin up startups, right? They fund small stage startups. They had a stat that they announced recently that was like an overwhelming majority of their new batch of companies, which they've given money to, are using AI to generate a majority of their code. Now, that does not mean that competent programmers aren't needed. That doesn't mean that that code is going to be secure or scalable or elegantly written. You know, it doesn't mean any of that, but it does mean that it's going to write a lot of it. And I think there's still going to be a place for professionals who can read the code and understand what's going on to make sure that there's nothing malicious injected into it, that it's not going to cause a problem rolling it out to something else. But I fully believe that this is absolutely where we're heading.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting thing to think about when you kind of internalize that idea and you start to think that obviously AIs are very specifically directed towards code writing because it's logic based. It's the kind of stuff that they're actually able to kind of grab onto. We are going to talk a little bit later about a new model from OpenAI, not public, that Sam Altman tweeted about that is specifically focused on creative writing. So creatives, you are not safe right now, but this is a kind of a watershed moment, I think. And Dario is somebody kind of unlike Sam, who I think most people believe is coming. Not that Sam is a full hype beast, but Sam does talk his own bag a lot, and Dario does too.
But Dario has traditionally been tempered, right?
Yes. Yeah, Dario is a little bit more tempered, and so when somebody like that says this, it should make you sit up. And I think the other part of this, Kevin, that we kind of teased in the beginning of the show that kind of made people sit up over the weekend were two big new coding updates. One is from China, which is Manus, which we're going to talk about first. And the other one we'll talk about in a bit is from OpenAI, which is a new coding API. And we will explain to you what those two things mean. But
just referencing that article that you read, are these parents right for saying go into art? Because it's not like the AI won't be able to generate full movies and music and everything else. Like, should they get into communications so they know how to speak to the machines, or poetry so they can creatively describe it? Or should they go to a trade school?
Well, okay, I will tell you very quickly, not to get too derailed by this, but my thesis on this was, yes, obviously already creative businesses are not doing great either. If anybody who in our audience that works in Hollywood or works in video games understands, they're in a real downturn, in part because some of the jobs are being eliminated for this reason, but for other reasons as well. My biggest thing is, this should open up a conversation with the entire world. And there are a lot of smart people that are now focusing on this. I heard a really great podcast. It's 4 hours long from a guy named Will McCaskill. It's on the 80,000 Hours podcast, which may be about how long this podcast is, but it is a really deep dive look at a person who used to be, he's actually one of the philosophers that started the effective altruism movement, which if you remember was a long story that you can dig in on Google on or ChatGPT, where he was kind of very anti-AI in the beginning and kind of aware of what was going on. He has pretty much flipped his position now in terms of like, he's basically seen what's coming. And I think this is an important kind of conversation for everybody to have right now. And the reason I bring this podcast up in relation to the article is my biggest thing is we have to start thinking about how and what meaningful work means, right? What does it mean to do meaningful work for people? So I think that feels like the biggest conversation going forward is, to your point, is poetry meaningful work? It probably is to some people, but right now I did not get a poetry degree. In fact, I was very interested in possibly getting an MFA in college in poetry because I wrote quite a bit of it and I had professors that liked it. But literally the reason I did not go is because you cannot make very much money in poetry. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it was not a smart move to get an MFA in poetry. But if you could have a life that felt meaningful and that was what you wanted to focus on, it probably would be a good use of human time,
Well, I guess the only poetry you need to write is a haiku that directs agents to go out and do your bidding.
Yes. What would it be?
And help you understand what meaning is.
Help me, Manus, please. That's 5 syllables.
Yeah.
I need a new term paper now. That's 7 syllables. I am more on today. There you go. That's my Manus haiku. I am more on today.
I thought it was like more on, like MORE. Like on.
Actually, that could work both ways.
Deep,
I am more
now
on,
I get
or
it.
I am more on. MORON.
I am more on today is great. That
more
was
on
actually
is more on. Yeah,
we're going to call the podcast that actually. It was
I am more on today.
All right. So I'm sorry I derailed with that, but I think it is an interesting discussion and I like that take. But let's get into it. Manus, the deep seek moment for AI agents that within 3 hours was basically approximated and open sourced. But let's take a step back. What is Manus, Gavin? What is this agentic future we keep ranting about? And what can it do now?
So I got into Manus. It is a limited beta, and just to be very basic on it, it is a agentic computer operating system from a company in China. And the idea with it basically is just like OpenAI's operator, and very much like Anthropic's computer use, which we'll get into in a second here. It takes over your window on your computer, not on your local computer, but in the cloud, and you can tell it to go and do things. So as I said, I got into it. And I have to say, it's pretty impressive. The first thing I asked it, because I play a lot of the game Balatro still, it's been out forever, but it is like my soothing place. So I'll still go back to it pretty often, like daily almost. It's just a way to kind of think through stuff. I asked it, can you create a Balatro strategy guide for me to get to, if you've played Balatro, you know, there's the mid and high game. And when you get to the high game, you have to kind of keep going until infinity. I wanted to see if it could get me to the Nan infinity score, which is like basically where the game kind of semi breaks, but that's like the way to win. It basically, the first time it created a strategy guide, I watched it. It went through all of the websites. It went to all the right places, and I didn't do anything. I was just watching as it worked. And it came back with a basic strategy guide, not the one I had asked for. And then I said, can you get me to this? Because this is what I really wanted. And it really did it. Like I can share it in our Discord. I'll share the strategy guide it created, but that very much feels like a duplicate of what deep research is doing at OpenAI, right? Like instead of in deep research, you're not seeing what it's doing, but it's doing the same amount of work. So in that instance, it works. It is free right now. I don't think that's possible to continue because, as you and I both know, in our secret startup that we've been discovering, is that like the costs of AI are not free, and you do cross a lot of other things over there. So that worked. And then I tried something else with it. This is actually a game we should make, and maybe we can help vibe code this, or somebody in our audience can make it. I wanted to make what's called an endless walking simulator. And basically what it is like you're just walking in beautiful neighborhoods and beautiful places, and you collect things along the way, and you're surprised by stuff, but you can't run, you can't jump, you just endlessly walk. So it was something about that to me felt like funny and dumb. And what was amazing about this is it set up a 15-stage play of how to do this. It showed me what the 15 steps were going to be. And it got through like the first 6 or 7, and it kept going. Like it was working for like an hour and a half on this thing.
Wow.
So much as in it also writes code, unlike deep research. It does a code writing thing too. And there's been people online who have shown what it can do. The problem is about step 7 or 8, it got stopped, and it got stopped for long context. And then it said it had a fatal flaw.
So the as you stepped away and this thing was crunching for hours.
Yeah. And writing code, by the way, not just writing words, writing code the whole time.
Right. But the part of that was researching, what should this game be built on? What platform, what tooling, and then what kind of things should happen in the game. So it was kind of doing the product manager research role. It chose
Unity. It started writing code for Unity, a Unity game, and it was doing all this stuff. And granted, like I don't think it would have been able to execute that, but it was writing all the Unity code. Like I could see it. I mean, I don't know what Unity code looks like, but it was writing code to go into the Unity stuff.
But yeah, if you would have given it like a more pared down thing, like, hey, let's make this run in a browser and make it, laptop compatible. So it's a low powered blah, blah, blah. It probably would have done the necessary research for that. And instead of write the actual code, just give me ways to describe how to code this to an engineer would be an output that I bet it wouldn't fail on. And you would have the plan for your game.
Yeah, and that some people have tried that already, and we've talked about vibe coding a lot, and there's a lot of people out there. There's a pretty good Min Choi who does a good job of collecting a bunch of variety of obviously tweet storms. He is a tweet master in that way, but he has we'll share a link. He has about 10 different various use cases of Manus and saw what people did. I think what's interesting about this is, it is first and foremost really interesting to see because this is kind of a combination of what operator is, OpenAI's operator or computer use, and deep research in the same thing. Now,
how dare you? This is the secret sauce on this is unknown, Gavin. There is a Colonel Sanders-esque recipe behind the scenes that allows Manus to be this all-seeing, all-knowing, navigate the web as it exists, use a graphical user interface. There must be so much technology going on here that we couldn't comprehend it. We couldn't cobble it together, and it was cloned in less than 3 hours.
Well, here's the funniest thing about this, which is that it is actually using Anthropic's computer use. So Jean X Liao on X had tweeted out the fact pretty quickly that this was essentially a Claude Sonnet wrapper with 29 tools using browser use. So Kevin, what's interesting to me about that is I don't think it actually makes this thing less interesting, especially for the fact, like, for right now, it's free to try.
It made it more interesting to me, to be honest.
Yeah. So tell me why, because I'm curious on your end why it made it more interesting.
Okay. So when we say something is a wrapper, we use that term a lot. But if you're new to this podcast or this space, that means it is a tool that wraps around another core technology. So in this case, the intelligence that is powering this machine that can browse the web, click on links, think deeply about a task. That's a known entity. That is, as you said, it was built on Claude Sonnet, it looks like. So they took existing, actually kind of outdated, it's an older model that they're using. I think it was 3.5. So they're using outdated large language model and wrapping this functionality around it, which means if you wanted to build your own, you probably could. Like, it won't take infinite resources and billions of dollars. In fact, I keep saying that less than 3 hours after this came out, when people realized what it was doing, there were 2 open source versions released that will let you kind of run this on your own. And you can either plug it into OpenAI, or the reason I said it made me more interested is that I love a future where open source catches up with the big leagues even faster. And so rather than having to pay out the nose, yes, the service is free right now, but that will not last forever unless there's some crazy ad supported something, but I'll digress there for a second. I love a world, Gavin, where you and I on our laptops can run, we'll talk about Gemma coming out later in the show. They actually just came out today as this recording with Google. But I love a world where you and I can run a small intelligence model on our phones or on our desktop, and then have a tool like this which can use that intelligence to go off and do things for us.
Yeah,
and it doesn't have to be
great.
this all-powerful something. It doesn't have to be the service that we don't know and trust. We can run these things locally, and we can hack and play with them so that they can work the way we need them to.
And that's how it escapes eventually, too. It gets out on our computers, and we're the reason why the AI escapes and takes over the world. The paperclip problem is our problem, Kevin. That's 100%. Exactly what you wanted to say, isn't it? You want the paperclip problem to happen.
The paperclip problem is not a problem. It's a solution. I've been saying that all along. Clippy is
a solution.
The end game.
It's a solution. That's right. So actually, this is a good transition, because one of the things I think that's really interesting, as I alluded to before, those open source models of this, and also what we're going to talk about next, which is OpenAI's API, both are very expensive to run. And so you hear these stories about, like, wow, look at all these cool things you can do on your own. And this is why Manus is actually interesting right now, because they're letting you use it for free. The amount of tokens that you need for this kind of back and forth is really interesting. Let's get into OpenAI's response. And I want to talk a little bit about the timing of this too, because if you remember last time DeepSeek came out, there was this huge news cycle around the idea of, like, oh my God, they figured out reasoning models and it's open source, and look at what they're crushing OpenAI and also crushing NVIDIA, and it dropped the stock market down. Well, a day after Manus happened, like Manus kind of blew up over the weekend, you see OpenAI come out with this update, which I think to me feels very much like a response to what Manus is, right? So let's talk, Kevin, what is this thing that OpenAI talked about? It was mentioned as being like for the devs, but I think for people out there who are not devs or might be interested in like what the state of the art with these AI agents is, this is probably really interesting to talk about.
Yeah, so it is a new API called Responses, which has a bunch of different features and functionality built in. The 3 that they really focused on are web search, file search, and then computer use. So web search is what it sounds like. It's wild that people who use ChatGPT take for granted, like, oh, it's really good at searching the web and going and reading blog posts and fetching those Reddit comments and giving them back. Like, yeah, it's good at that. Except if you were developing with OpenAI in mind, you never had access to that tool. And it was mind-boggling, especially for someone who has expectations, like people literally calling them going, why doesn't our thing do this? And it's like, well, because you can't with it. So you had to go and bolt on Perplexity or DuckDuckGo or Google or Bing or something else. You had to go externally for your web searches. Well, now they're built in. It's the same web search functionality that ChatGPT has. It's a huge deal for developers, which will become a huge deal for users because a lot of people develop on OpenAI. We can get to the cost of that in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to it now. It's expensive.
Yeah, like crazy expensive. Like, I mean, let's go through like what it actually costs, because I think people should understand this. Like
3 cents per query.
Yeah. So imagine that. So you're building an app, let's say, and every time somebody has a question for you, it costs 3 cents. So as a developer, the pass-through cost to you is incredibly expensive. In fact, I felt bad after I read this last night.
Wait, did you feel bad because you cost OpenAI money searching for? Okay, what is it?
I mean, this is, by the way, super interesting, but I asked, is it true that South Korea has the lowest fertility rate in the world? And if so, why? This was me following up on a tweet that was interesting I saw. But what was interesting is, yes, they do have some of the lowest in the world, maybe not the lowest. But anyway, that was something that I use OpenAI for, to ask. So if you're a developer and you're thinking, hey, I could make a question and answers app, unless you charge a boatload of money for that app, you are not going to be able to make money on this thing. And it also speaks to, Kevin, just how much money is being lost at these major companies, as well as all these little AI startups in some form.
Well, you know, like OpenAI, clearly they need the money machines to start printing, right? They've raised a lot. They're going to raise a lot more. Is that 3 cents per query? Is that a 250% markup on all of the things? Or is that really what it's costing them? Are they losing money with these queries?
I bet they might be losing money, or it's hard to imagine that. Well, in part, you know, the question I have is they can't price it so cheap that they lose a lot of money. So you have to realize that this pricing has to be at least break even for them, I think. But still, that almost becomes like, unless you are a major company that has money in the coffers already, it is hard to imagine that being able to be used.
Right. Well, it's here. It's expensive, but it's nice that it's here. And I do expect, I mean, OpenAI is usually pretty good about dropping costs on things, especially in the wake of competitors. So we'll see if that gets there. The other two things, file search is kind of what it sounds like, the ability to retrieve customer data or user data. So to pull out your preferences, or if you've ever shopped before, or if you have a specific model of something, here's your support document. Like, big deal for developers. Nice to have. It seems very elegant. All of these tools, by the way, are like 6 lines of code to get started. It's basically nothing. And if you're listening to this and going like, what does this even mean to me? If you have an idea for something and you want to be on Shark Tank, having to do a royalty deal with Kevin O'Leary a year from now, these are the tools that you can quickly whisper into a machine and get results out of. And then number 3, which is kind of the reason for the season here, is the computer use is now part of the API. So if you want to build an application or something that you need an agentic browser to happen, OpenAI will spin up a machine and allow it to go browse the web, search, do things. I think this is what you were leading to, Gavin. You believe that the timing of this is, it's on the heels of this Manus thing. Maybe they were already cooking on it and just waiting, because it is an interesting, like, someone takes a shot out of a cannon and it seems like right away OpenAI is there with that. Okay, we had this one on the shelf, but we had no reason to really release it just yet. So now we're answering. Or do you think it's 95% of the way there and they're like, we got to get it out because this other thing happened?
It was probably a little bit of both. My assumption is that, and we've talked about on the show when DeepSeek came out, that even Sam had said they're going to start shipping stuff faster. And my assumption, in part, it was like, in the OpenAI world, they have all this stuff. They have like a year's worth of stuff they've been working on that isn't out, and stuff that's pushed out further still. I just think this is we ship faster, we go quicker. This is the place they're going to be.
So plenty of tools announced for developers, but if you want to know what they look and feel like, I'm shouting out hashtag not an ad, browserbase.com. If you go to cua.browserbase.com, that's computer use agent, cua.browserbase.com, you can watch AI browse the web right there. Like, they let you run it for free for now. And it's what you expect. So, some of the suggestions are, play a challenging game of 2048 or check the price of NVIDIA stock. Gavin, what request would you like for me to give to this right now?
Give me Guy Fieri's current location.
Okay. I don't know if it might reject that.
Oh, man, it rejected it right out. It said, I'm unable to provide real-time information about others. Okay, so let's ask it.
I'm unable to help with that request is all I got. All right, let's go back.
Let's ask it, what is Guy Fieri's signature dish?
And if he were eating it right now, where would he be eating it?
Hold on, that's not good either, because it just gives you an answer in the chat. Let's see. We got to think of something that it can do agentically. It doesn't even do that agentically. Like,
no, hold on. I just spun up a new computer use browser. I said, what is Guy Fieri's signature dish? I can see it now. It went right to Google. It's searching Guy Fieri's signature dish.
Okay.
which is something. It says it's pressing the keys, enter, and the reasoning is submitting the search query to find information about the requested topic. This will execute the search and retrieve relevant results. Look, we say this all the time. This is the worst these tools will ever be. Yes. And Gavin, by the way, like not a total aside, but I am now, like, my patience level is less than thin.
Yes.
When people who know about AI, who use AI, ask the most basic question that if just whispered into the machine, they would not only get an answer, they would get step-by-step, let me hold your hand instructions. Yep. And now it's like, there was a site called Let Me Google That For You back in the day. It might still exist, where basically you type a question and you hit a button, you send somebody that link. So when someone asks you like, hey, how many moons are there? You just type it into Let Me Google That For You, and they click the link. It literally Googles it for them. This is the new Let Me Google That For You. So we're on step 7, by the way, of it, reading a Business Insider article,
we're only at $500 on the clock too as well. So sorry, browser base. We apologize.
This is actually an American psyop to tank China's economy, because we are
well, no, this is OpenAI. This is using OpenAI, Kevin. We're tanking America without realizing
right. I thought this was Manus.
We've been double psyoped. We've been double psyoped.
The call's coming from inside the house. I'm sorry, I'm a traitor. I have to leave this country.
Okay, I'm just going to ask the same thing. What is Guy Fieri's signature?
You know, what's interesting is because it's showing you the steps here, and it was like step 12 was Control F. It was trying to do a find on the page and waiting for the page to respond, and now it's just scrolling around trying to get more context. It's on step 15.
No, really? Okay, well, let's see.
2 minutes and 35 seconds into agentic use, and we still don't have the answer.
Manus has a 15, no, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like a 12-step process it's going through right now. It's analyzing the search results. So maybe we should, for right now, Kev,
we can come back to this.
And we'll come back and see which one can do the best at this. And meanwhile, we should transition into, hey, are you listening to this podcast on audio, or are you watching it on YouTube? Guess what? We need your help. Share this podcast, subscribe on the YouTube channel, do all the stuff that you can to help us spread the word about this podcast, AI for Humans. We like making it. It is the kind of thing that Kevin and I spend our own time on because we enjoy doing it. And we also enjoy anytime we hear from our audience. So please spread the word. If you have an extra couple bucks, we have a Patreon that's basically a tip jar for us. You can find the link in our show notes. Please support us, and thank you so much for listening or watching.
For just 5 cents a query, you too can help AI for Humans reach an audience of dozens. No, it really, sharing the thing is the only way we grow. It's this thing. So thank you. And please don't use AI agents to subscribe to the podcast. You have to do it yourself and tell your friends and tell your family to please give us a sub, share it, like it. Thank you for the support. Gavin, I'm at 4 minutes now, and this thing is still, clicking about. Funny.
I'm now at like step 5. Manus is working, check completeness of gathered information. So Manus is still going on this. We'll see what's happening. In the meantime, Kev, I do want to mention one thing about OpenAI's current situation. Sam Altman pushed out a tweet yesterday that made a lot of people mad. I don't know if you saw this, but basically he said that they are working on a creative writing version of one of their engines, one of their LLMs. And he pushed out a story that he had written. And to be honest with you, like, it was confusing to me because the story is not the kind of thing that you would normally put out there. He asked specifically for a story that was a meta-fictional story about grief and AI. And when you read it, it is interesting, right? Like, it's clearly making interesting creative choices. It is making stuff. A lot of people came out of the woodwork and said how much it blew, how much it sucked. I didn't think it was as bad as most people said, but what I would rather see something like this is like almost give it the ability to write a simple story. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I tried to get ChatGPT to write spicy, like, you know, romance fiction. I would rather see it try that than some sort of like kind of way out there metafictional idea, because I think then you start to get to the place of like, is it trying to be literary? Anyway, Kev, this was an interesting space because we've talked about for a while creative writing and creative tasks as being something that humans would kind of like want more than anything else. And I think this is going to be the next agentic world is like, what does it look like when you read, say, a short story or a novel written by a computer that you may or may not know is written by a computer that moves you in some way? And not that this one did, I don't think so, but
yeah, I would say there's a LinkedIn article being posted right now, Gavin, about parents telling their kids to get into kinesiology now. Like, oh, we said get away from coding and tech and go into arts. Okay, get away from the arts. Get into anything but.
That's right. It's time now. You got to leave the arts. Get into welding. Welding is the only thing that's going to be around.
Yes, use your hands until the robots catch up. But obviously, Gavin, there was the never AIers saying, "I hate this" right off the rip. But the response that actually resonated with me, because I felt this as well. Like as I was reading it, I was looking for like the buckle up, buttercup, or let's delve into the blah, 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 the usual AI tropes. Obviously, they weren't there. So it was like, okay, it's clearly something different. But I just didn't care. Like I was interested in it on a technical level, but one of the responses that resonated with me, because it was what I was feeling when I scrolled to it, was like, just not interested in this thing written by a robot. And I wonder if that will be the end result of this. That's still like, you know, we've said it before, computers can crush humans at playing chess, but I'm not interested in watching two robots play chess. Yeah.
I think somebody at some point will publish a book anonymously as a robot. Basically, they'll write a book and they'll have a name on it. Surprise, a robot. And that will be a conversation. But I think you're absolutely right. I think ultimately people want to hear stories. Oh, by the way, Manus is done on my end. Is yours still going?
Mine at session time, it's at 6 minutes and 33 seconds of a 5-minute limited session, and it's now on the footer of Business Insider, trying to access account options.
Well, okay, I will tell you, the Manus one doesn't show you exactly step by step when you're doing something like this. It's a little bit more like deep research. It shows you the tasks it goes through. But the answer it gave me is that his signature dish is dragon's breath chili. So what I would love to be able to do is according to the Food Network, the recipe has 547 stars with a high rating of 4.8 out of 5 stars. I'm just curious to Google it. Yeah, you know, so it's interesting. Like, so what it has sources here that it basically has said. What's really funny is that Manus says Dragon's Breath chili was declared the winner when pitted against Jimmy Fallon's chili recipe. So shout out to my friend Jimmy Fallon. I used to work on that show. Well, how weird is it that like they're using that as the reason? But
well, if you just do a Google search for Guy Fieri's signature dish, Gemini does a fantastic job of putting it right there at the top, now, highlighted.
Do you see it at the top? Because I don't. Yeah. I see bacon mac and cheeseburger. Not. I did the exact same search on it, and I don't see Dragon's Breath chili.
So I see Dragon's Breath chili in the AI overview, and if I hit more info, it's signature dishes: Dragon's Breath chili number 1, then mac and cheese the second one, then chili number 3.
Gavin, we have found something crazy.
Are we in a Fieri bubble? What's going on in the Fieri-verse?
There is, on my AI search overview, there is no Dragon's Breath chili mentioned at all. Like it talks about, it basically gives like the bacon mac and cheeseburger with what's in it. And then one thing it does say is donkey mayo sauce. In parentheses, it says Fieri signature. So I wonder if in my search, that's what came up.
That is a spicy OpenAI take on a romantic novel, is Guy Fieri's donkey mayo. That's why that's popping up on only your computer, Gavin.
You're right. That's exactly
and you're
right.
Twisted. And by the way, on step 54 of the computer use agent browser, it says, I've encountered some issues with the page navigation, but based off what I've gathered so far, Guy Fieri's signature dish is often considered to be Dragon's Breath chili.
Oh, okay. So they came up with the same answer. So again,
it only took
sorry
9
to
minutes.
OpenAI and sorry to OpenAI and Anthropic or Manus. We just wasted $1,000 on this, but it's the same thing as the Google's. But again, just to be clear, this is an experiment to show you how these computers can work on their own. And like deep research, you send it away and it comes back with something. And to the idea that like you can send away stuff. What if you sent away 15 things at once and it can scale at a certain level? So a lot of stuff there to think about with AI agents. Kevin, speaking of scale, we should quickly talk about a thing that Google dropped today, which is Gemma 3. Now, mostly we've avoided these Gemma models because they've never been that exciting. This is a small model, meaning that it is designed to work on, very small processing. The highest level of it, I think, is the 32 gigabyte version, and it can work on one H100, which is not something anybody has at their house. But the smaller models can work on regular graphics cards and work locally. And coming from Google, the results on this are pretty good because it's getting to Gemini 1.5 levels, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're on their chatbot arena elo score graph, which we don't have to get into the weeds on that. Just know that it is getting up there with DeepSeek R1, which is a massive compute intensive reasoning model. And this thing requires a lot less resources and seems to perform nearly as good. So what happens when you pour reasoning into this model as well? But this is the type of intelligence that is now, it's multimodal. So you can snap a photo of something and it can analyze it, summarize things, and it's going to be running in our pockets very, very soon. We're going to have state of the art level intelligence in our phones. Like that. Yeah,
and state of the art now, in a year from now, it may be different, but the same way that you might buy a Mac M2 now because you don't need the power of the Mac M4, that is probably where the consumer will be, and it will be cheaper, faster, and just as good of the state of the art right now. So big deal there.
Kudos to
the
Google.
other big opening new tool we want to talk briefly about is Hedra. Our friends at Hedra, we love those guys. They've been around for a bit. They just dropped Character-3. So this is their new lip sync model. And Kevin, I did find they've had a few kind of glitches in their website, but they're worked out pretty well. I definitely have spent a little bit of time. I want to spend more time with this. I owe them. I feel like I'm going to do some sort of new goofy thing because I
do see a lot of people
tools.
using the tool, and people seem to be pretty impressed. Just to level set, Hedra is a tool that lets you add like lip movement and basic head movement to characters, but now this new update gives you almost full body control in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's not like it's a little tricky because my experience with it so far has been mostly it does hands. And if you look at the video they released, like there's a lot of really interesting stuff. There's a video from Colonel Tasty, which is great Twitter name. His name is @JoshuaSays, where he animated an old woman. I'm very fond to old AI people.
This looks great.
It's very cool. And you can see the hand movement of the woman's cigarette, like kind of moving back and forth as she talks. I actually asked this guy on X, I said, do you mind sharing what you prompted in the text box here? And he basically said, like, I used ImageFX for the picture. He used a picture to upload. He used 11 Labs. Then I asked him, oh, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm actually talking about on Hedra now, it allows you to prompt additional stuff when you want to use it. He said nothing. So he just put in the graphic, the image, and he put in the audio clip.
The movement of the hand and the robe with the cigarette. And it looks very good. Yeah,
so I sent you something that we should play here that I just tried to do this morning. And, one of the things that I'm often struggle with, I just texted it to a group of people who are like a bunch of very smart AI people, and nobody got back to me about the idea of my text was, hey, does anybody here have experience animating non-human characters in lip sync? And like all these people that are these very smart AI people like just kind of silenced me. And I realized they probably all think I'm trying to do some sort of weird like furry style AI animation stuff. So anyway,
you're trying to make Guy Fieri's Donkey Mayo talk to you, right, exactly, and no one wants any part of your sick and twisted games, Gavin.
Right. So we have our classic smiling Terminator robot. I created an image of him in his new studio because I think this is an easy way to look at this stuff. I then added a clip from 11 Labs, and I just said to Hedra, go do this, so watch it here.
In our lead story tonight, Kevin Pereira has lost his freaking mind. The man many described as a eccentric genius has again started talking about feet.
What? No, okay, that's fake news.
True fake news. But so if you zoom in on that, Kev, it's not perfect, but look at the mouth, right? It actually kind of does go along pretty well with it. And I gave it a smiling face to start with. It'd probably be better if I gave it a flat face without it smiling. But it does do a good job of a non-human face lip sync there.
These models sometimes struggle if you start with an open mouth or a big smile. It struggles to do the mouth's closed. But ironically, if you start with a closed mouth, it can open it. Okay.
Yeah.
I see, I'm looking at there's a couple frames where the hands get a little blurry and digitized, but it looks like it's fairly properly animating the reflections in the desk as well as the way the tie and the clothing seems to reflect. This is good.
It's a step up. It's a step up from, and I think again, lip sync is a real legitimate use case for a lot of this stuff. And we've talked about AI movies and all these really interesting AI studios. But this is something that is a tool that is needed for this space if you want to do actual animated AI stuff. And what's cool about this tool, you can move to the side or you can do stuff in different directions. By the way, I do want to shout out, as we have done 1,000 times in the show, if you are not watching what NeuralViz is doing on YouTube or on TikTok, you must. He has overtaken TikTok now, and smartly, I think we started it, Kevin. I'm not going to take credit, but we made our baby Joe Rogan podcast. He started to make fake podcast clips with his character Tiggy Skibbles, which you should 100% watch. But now he started even further. He's smartly taking formats where, do you know those man on the street interviews that you see people do?
Yes. Yeah.
It's
He's
amazing.
taking popular meme tropes and applying them to the world. And what I love is that if you really dive into Neuroviz's stuff, it's all an integrated world. So characters will pop up. There's references to it all. It's all like this weird alternate alien dimension. It's super, super enjoyable, and love that he's hitting millions of views.
Yeah, and so I mentioned him because he was one of the early users of the old Hedra, and I'm sure is starting to play around with this new one. So again, if you want to create some sort of interesting speaking, this is the way to do it. And Neuroviz particularly uses a lot of weird-looking aliens that he definitely needs this sort of tool to do it with.
I want to shout out a new tool that was released today as well, Gavin, but it's a shout out and a shade. It's like a shout out and some shame. Yeah, it's like I'm pointing to it, but I'm wagging that finger at you. Quander AI, Gavin. I don't know if you've seen.
Yeah, I saw this tweet.
Quander.
It was like a real you can prompt a 1-minute movie, or you can prompt a full movie by nothing. Or it was a very hype beastie type of tweet.
I'm going to try to send you a video of what I did with it this morning. I told it to give me a script, because you can basically create 1-minute videos, Gav. There you can do 16:9 or 9:16, so whatever aspect ratio you want. There's some suggested templates for what types of videos you can make, but I told it to give me a romantic montage in an ad, like in a commercial thing, using that template, about Guy Fieri falling in love with an anthropomorphic hot dog. So immediately it does this wizard-like onboarding process. And so you get a script editor where it bounced out a script, Gavin, which has it says narrator, in a world where flavor meets friendship. And then Guy Fieri steps out of the car in slow motion, sunglasses gleaming beside him. An anthropomorphic hot dog in sunglasses and tiny flip-flops emerges. Then it has them it says Guy Fieri's dialogue is, ready for the most bomb.com getaway of your life, buddy?
Okay.
And there's some dialogue.
Not far off, not that far off, maybe.
Then you click next, and it gives you style selection: realistic, anime, film, bricks, which is Lego. Oh,
I know where this is going.
Then you can approve the style.
I said in your video. I know where this is going.
Yeah, and then you go, oh, okay. Now then it spits out characters based off the script. And by the way, the interface, we know that these tools exist, right? We cover them all the time. They are bolting together a bunch of different tools and techniques in a way that by the way, is fairly seamless. So you can choose the narrator voice, you can modify it. It then gives you your characters, which there's key art for Guy Fieri and for the hot dog. It's a good anthropomorphic hot dog, solid little arms, a nice little smiley face.
Which was not easy to do. That's not necessarily easy to do.
And you can go in, and again, you can re-roll the character, you can edit the description. Okay, nice. Then you can choose your locations, and it's generating locations for each, and the objects in the scene. So I went in and I changed an umbrella drink to a jug of donkey sauce, Gavin. Which I did not know you were experimenting with donkey sauce. But when I clicked generate, it actually put the words donkey sauce on a glass jug with this weird, it's a brown sludge. We don't have to get into that, but it is. I also generated a hot dog jet ski instead of a regular jet ski. All of this stuff, if you're watching the video version, it is actually surprisingly good. Yeah. And now I'm I can't wait to watch the video. Which is when, Gavin, it told me I could become my own movie studio and unleash my creativity and share my unique stories with the world effortlessly, Gavin, for the low, low price of $19 a month if I buy a subscription.
Yes. And by the way, this is so funny you had this experience with this. So we may never know, because we've talked about in this show before how we have a bajillion subscriptions for this already. And it really does take a while to get there. There is something to be said right now for these tools that are subscription-based, but don't let you try them. Just to devs out there, I need to try something before I am going to put my credit card out there. And I know a lot of people are trying to make these subscriptions work. And there's a lot of conversation on X about how do I get my monthly ARR up, and how do I get that's a recurring revenue. You must let me try or I will not buy. And I think this is probably the case for the majority of the world at large. And in this instance, goes back to our conversation earlier, Kevin. It's what they've already done here probably cost them, I don't know, $5 per user to go through this process. I was regenerating
characters and scenes and playing these narrator voices and stuff. I'm sure it was costing them. And it's tough because you don't want to as much as I say I'm going to wag my finger or shade the developers, like I don't know how well funded, if at all, this company is, Gavin. And it's like, of course, it's tough to do these things and it can be expensive. But as the user, just like you said, a lot of the tools allow me to try before I buy. And what you did was like you trapped me in this funnel, right? And had me go through this stuff. And I'm excited to pull the handle now and see what the generation looks like. And I got to that phase. And maybe some users will feel invested and go, okay, I'll give you the $20 or I'll buy a pack of compute for $10 and see what that looks like. But this is the tough push and pull of, I know it costs you money, but also there's an expectation that if I spent the time and energy to get this far in your pipeline, you're going to let me get at least one generation out of it.
Yeah. And then it becomes a bad product, right? Now, this is no shade against these people. I don't know them, but also like
it's a bad experience.
Bad experience. You don't get the user to try it. Now, maybe it comes out and it's like a piece of crap and we don't know that for sure. But if it comes out and it's really good, there's a conversion there that can happen from a business standpoint. But again, this is like the business model of these startups now is really tricky because as Kevin and I know, we've been doing business models for our startup. You must pay for every time somebody interacts. And when you are looking at these larger companies, they are hemorrhaging money in part because of that. But also the larger companies own the models, right? So they can give themselves the cheapest possible deal for themselves. Right. But they are going to charge market rates across the board for everyone else.
Well, and look, put up or shut up, Gavin. Free AI product is impossible to make unless
it is a weekly
AI
newsletter
for
us.
humans. And the weekly newsletter, you got it, buddy.
Please go subscribe to our newsletter. It's on our website at aiforhumans.show. Every week we try to dive into whatever the interesting story is and give you some really interesting creative tools to play with too. So it's like a mini version of our show that comes out on Tuesdays in your email. Go grab it. And Kev, one thing I do want to talk about that I think we talked about in that, if not, we'll talk about it next week, was this really interesting workflow that a lot of people are doing where it takes something through to Magnific, which is like an up-res or a style transfer type of thing, which you can also find open source for, and then uses Runway's first frame scenario, which we talked about last week, to make this kind of very cool look. And in this instance, what Roar_Fly did, Roar_Fly, is he took Claude and made a flyover 3D model of a mountain and then actually used this workflow to make this really very cool looking cinematic shot of a mountain, of a house on a mountain, which is crazy.
So again, he's using Claude, he's using a text-based chat interface and asking it to generate a castle out of blocky primitive shapes. And it does. And then he goes back and makes little tweaks. There were trees. He had to remove the trees. And so he gets this almost like Mario 64 beta version of a castle on a hill. He makes it look like this gorgeous Sintra palace on a hill, but it's just a still, Gavin. That's not dynamic.
Right. So then he takes that and puts it into Runway and animates it. And then suddenly he image transfers it, which is what we talked about last week. If you want to hear specifically, go back and check that out. He takes that and starts to really make this really unique shot. It's a shot for a film. And, you talk about with 3D films, you talk about with films about how people do like graphics work for wide open vistas. This is a fast way to get to those kind of shots. Like you can imagine, like if you had like a sweeping shot of an epic battlefield in some form, you could use Claude to create kind of like a very rough sort of scenario for that. And then use these steps along the way to make it much faster and much easier than you would for a normal giant shot.
So yeah, it's a very interesting pipeline. Anybody can try it essentially and play around with it. There are open source ways to do this, but if you want to link to the tweet, it'll be in the old show notes. So please check that out. But that was we kind of jumped the gun a little bit, Gavin, because that was one of those things that stops us dead in our tracks and makes us say, hey, I see what you did there.
Sometimes you're scrolling without a care. Then suddenly you stop and shout. AI, see what you did there. AI, see what you did there.
All right, Kev, we have two quick robot updates. These are both really interesting. First and foremost, our friends at the Humanoid Hub, which is a great follow on Twitter. They shot out a bunch of videos of robots. They have this great video of a robot that at first doesn't seem that exciting, but if you stick with it for just a little while, you get to see robot on hoverboard. And to me, Kevin, this is the robots finally getting to have some fun in their lives. They're not just out there kung fu kicking or getting pushed over. They're on a little scooter and then they're on a hoverboard, which to me is perfect.
They are one firmware update away from that robot knowing how to vape. And the moment
Yes,
it does, it can hop on the hoverboard and steal my wife. And there's nothing I can do about it. I will be
Just to be clear,
robo-cucked.
yeah, this is from AGIBot or AGIBot's Lingxi X2 robot. And it supposedly can ride a scooter, a hoverboard, and a self-driving bike. I mean, a self-driving bike, who couldn't ride that? But the scooter and the hoverboard are pretty interesting to me in some form.
But it hops on a self-balancing bike. I mean, yeah, but then the fact that it can pilot it around, I think it's amazing. And again, it can take my wife.
Then, Kevin, speaking of taking your wife, what does your wife think about long distance runners? Is she hot for them?
She's hot for anything that is not me, Gavin. We've discussed this offline, and I'd rather you not trying it here. I'm in a very sensitive place.
Engine AI released this video, and many times people always say these videos look fake, they look fake, they look fake.
Yeah.
In this instance, I definitely felt at one point, first, this might have been the case. This is a humanoid robot running what looks like almost like a long distance marathon run. It's running with a city in the background.
And they trained it on Steven Seagal, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the clomping of the tweets and the arms are moving in such a funny way. What I love, play the audio of this. Just listen to the audio of the clomping feet. Kevin, that's the sound you hear when you're running from the robot and it's got a gun and it's pointed at you and you've got you're like, I didn't mean to kick you. I didn't mean to hit you with the stick. I'm so sorry, Mr. Robot. That's our 2040 world.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's me on the treadmill at Orange Theory. That's my gait, just clomping about. Look, I'm not convinced it's real.
You're not. You're not convinced this
real.
one's real. That's
I don't wanna
interesting. You think
believe
it
it.
might be fake. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. We got some other great stuff to go through. Speaking of robotic workflows, this is one of the coolest things I've seen in a while. This is Factorio. If you know that game, you may be obsessed with it. I tried it for a while. It was almost like too complicated for me. It is a game where you put together like a factory and it gets very dense very fast. So if you are like a Civilization fan or you like those kind of games, this is like a game for you where it's really systems based in a specific way. A person has basically created a Factorio benchmark, which means that he is using AI agents to play this game. And as you can imagine with anything that has a knowledge tree, if you played Civilization, like you get one thing and it branches off and you can get one or these three things and it gets more and more complicated. Factorio is like one of the most complicated games in the world in that way. And what's interesting is seeing these different AIs and how far they got into it. And it sounds like Claude, as we know, Claude was playing Pokemon, has gotten the farthest. And that's not surprising because it's very good at this sort of thinking through stuff. But it is going to be something interesting to watch because all of them get stopped relatively quickly. But again, just a shout out to this guy, Jack Hopkins, and it's a GitHub page that he published with this up there. He's going to update it over time. You get to see like, okay, how did it get certain resources? How far did it get in the tech tree? To me, it's just a cool way of doing a new sort of benchmark with something that we know and have used.
And if you're a robot out there and you can play Factorio and you could smelt things and I don't know, generate plastic, whatever some of the benchmarks were, what's crazy, Gavin, is that you can take my wife.
Please take my wife, please. Clomp, 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 clomp. That's the sound of the robots coming for your wife.
All right, we have to talk. Is it Cuco or Cuco? No, Cuco is me with the robots.
You're the Cuco. You're the
Paul Trillo, traditional 2D animation meets the bleeding edge of experimental techniques. This was a tweet that has thousands of views and needs to have tens of thousands more. He was a writer-director on a short, and it is a beautiful breakdown of how talented artists wielding AI-powered tools can dramatically increase their output and experiment and even the quality of product in some ways. And this to me is like the answer to everybody who shouts. There was a thing that was going viral this morning as of the recording where someone took a screen grab of credits for a movie or a game and it said AI art and everybody's like, boo, hiss, it's stolen, it's this. And I'm like, just send this link to anyone in your life that says all AI art is stolen art or this, that, the other. I'm not talking about washing away the original sin of the training data, but I'm talking about the reality that we are in now and going to be way further in the very near future, that talented artists are going to unlock new levels of creativity. And this video shows exactly that.
Yeah, I actually emailed back and forth a little bit with Paul because I was such a fan of it. And, Paul actually was one of the original kind of artists who did some Sora stuff. You remember that Sora shot that's on a school bus? Like he did that and a couple other things. So You really do. If you are interested in AI video, you should really watch this video because it is not just a normal breakdown or a walkthrough. Like Paul talks about how they made a 3D world basically to create some of these shots and how the original art that was created by the artist is used to make new Lauras for other characters in the world. That was one of the most interesting things is basically they created a Laura, which we haven't said that for a while, but if you're not familiar, a Laura is a small training data set of a specific type of art that then you can get the machines to kind of produce versions of that. They use the Laura to create background characters based on the main characters that exist. So please go watch this. It is one of the best videos I've seen that shows how
Agreed.
important art plus AI can be a real difference.
Yeah, agreed. Now, I have not played Turing Twist yet, Gavin. Am I going to love this or hate this?
So this game is a kind of a weird one-off thing. It's a vibe coded game, I think. But what I want everybody to be aware of here is the Turing test, obviously, as we've talked about on the show before, is like the original Turing test by Alan Turing was a person talks to both a computer and a person, and the Turing test would be solved if they couldn't tell the difference, right? This flips that on the head a little bit. You are the human, but you have to pretend to be a computer, and you're in a room with a certain amount of other AI agents that are trying to figure out who in the room is AI. So you have to speak enough like an AI and try to pretend to be an AI. And it is, Kevin, such a fascinating thing to try. It is a live demo. You only get a couple times because, again, I think it's costing the guy that made it a fair amount of money. But you should try it. I think it's super interesting to kind of, and what's interesting is like you'll see like certain of the agents that he's put in here have voices, but you try to replicate what they do and they find out very quickly. Like I lost in the very first round immediately because I couldn't speak enough like an AI.
Were you playing against Tito or Zane?
I think Tito was one of the guys. I played with three people. I played against one of them.
Tito's
was trying
a
to
rookie,
speak like
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you see what it is though, right? It's almost like Among Us, but like reversed in a weird way.
That's fun. No, what a fun concept. That's very cool. I will definitely give this a try. And it really shades my AI vibe coding efforts, Gavin, which you're going to try. Surprise, surprise.
That's fantastic. So finally, before we move on to what we do with AI this week, there's just a dumb, fun video. And I love when people just do stuff that's surprising. This person took shots of the Academy Awards where Conan and other people were presenting, literally just shots of them presenting, and then used an AI video tool to put animals on their shoulders. So you have 5 or 6 shots of famous people, Conan, Oppenheimer star. What's Oppenheimer star? What's his name? I just call him Oppenheimer star. What the hell is his name? Now I can't remember. This is where we need AI, Kevin. I need an instant database check.
Something like that name. Let's think. What is it? Don't Google it. Why can't I? You're just waiting for me. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm letting. I'm making way. I'm giving you space.
Wait, I know because I love Peaky Blinders. He's in Peaky Blinders.
Damn it! It's in my brain. Oh, Cillian Murphy. Yes. God damn it.
Buddy, you got there. Oh, that was like a computer use agent making its way to the answer. And I think you still beat OpenAI. Good job,
right,
buddy.
Probably. Anyway, go watch this video. It's super fun. All right. Before we jump to what you made, I have one very fast thing that I wanted to shout out because sometimes AI video fails do not get enough love. And I had one of my favorite AI video fails of all time come out this week. I tried to use, I think it was Runway, and this is not shade against Runway because it's a very complicated scene. I tried to use a video to video transfer of the shot from Jurassic Park where Sam Neill and Laura Dern first see the dinosaurs and they're in the Jeep and they turn. I tried to make an anime version of that. And you've seen this. Just describe a little bit about to the people listening, but also the people watching, like what you see in this video, and just what makes it so fun.
If you don't know the scene, it's where they're in a Jeep and they stand up and there's a dramatic eyeglass removal and then the head turn towards the dinosaurs as they see them in the park for the first time. You did is it a Naruto anime style flip?
I mean, I just said anime. So yeah, clearly It took some Naruto elements in there.
Yeah. But you see a character remove like a cowboy hat with a band on it from within a Jeep, revealing another cap beneath it, which is great. Then you watch them kind of like eyeing with their glasses on. They stand up, they get out of the Jeep. They do look anime styled, like I'll give them that. The glasses get removed and it's the meme of too many glasses because there's another pair of sunglasses right beneath it. And then a character is playing with what looks like a steering wheel frisbee in a Jeep.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I don't know what that's about, but it looks like they're about to play an ultimate frizz game. And then I don't know. And then like a human being is a dinosaur. like,
Well, that's what I was
moving
going to say.
about in
My
the background.
favorite
Yeah.
part about this is in the uploaded clip, there's a shot of the Brontosaurus, which is the big Brontosaurus. And if you just find the frame for a couple seconds,
it
there's
pops
twice
up.
that a Brontosaurus looking thing shows up with the anime guy's head. Anyway, these are always fun. If you share these with us, we will appreciate them. I know so many people go through AI video generations. I think there needs to be a better shout out for AI video fails.
We need a graveyard in our Discord for these
Yes.
because they
Yes.
can all rest in power with us. We love broken AI videos.
So tell me what you did. You made this game. I want to hear about that. So I don't know anything about this out there, so I'm very excited to
Gavin,
see what this is.
Gavin, it was 10 o'clock last night. And I remember that we have a 100th episode coming up. And I was like, what's something special I could make for my special boy? Because that's what you are in my life, Gavin. Are you familiar with the Eat Hot Chip meme?
Yes, yeah, I've seen the one that Shaq did, and it's always fun, right? Where there's one, is it a company called like Packy something or something like that? It's a single
that's the
chip
hot
in a
chip
bag.
challenge. That is where like you try to eat the
that's a
spicy
different
chip.
thing. No, I don't know the
Yeah.
hot chip meme.
The original one is not exactly appropriate, but I will say that around 2019, the version that caught on that I giggle about all the time, that April quotes, my wife, she quotes before she leaves me for robots, and my friend group mentions, is that it's any female born after 1993 can't cook. All they know is McDonald's, charge they phone, twerk, be bisexual, eat hot chip, and lie. That's
I
the
see.
meme
So
text.
it's a copy pasta that has become a meme into itself. I see what you're saying.
100%. It is an enjoyable.
And just to be
quote.
clear for the world at large, this is not Kevin's beliefs. He is calling out a meme from 2019. Just want to make
Yes.
sure everybody knows that. The robots know that for the future. That's all I want to know.
Thank you for clarifying and saving me. I realize now maybe this doesn't belong on the show. It's a silly meme to the point, like whenever I do something dumb, which is fairly often, April will look at me and say something like, you should charge your phone, or why aren't you should
Right.
just eat hot chip, right?
Right.
And that's the go back and forth of like, we don't know anything, we can't do anything, we just eat hot chip and lie, and we twerk.
Okay.
Well, I took the meme, Gavin, and I gave it to Claude 3.7, and I said, this needs to be a web game. And I said, let's create mini games for all of the things that any female born after 1993 can't do. Again,
Okay.
not my belief or opinion, but this is the popular copy pasta. And so it created the Eat Hot Chip game, Gavin.
Okay, so should I select female gender in 1993 and on? Is that what we're doing here?
It's the only thing you can select to play the Hot Chip Challenge, because you have to be a female born after 1993.
Okay, all right. So now
the
I see a
game-
screen here which says charge phone. Oh, is this kind of like that guy?
It's like a cookie
thing the guy
clicker.
made the other day where it's like new things will show up the more you do stuff?
So it's like a cookie clicker, and that your phone is constantly losing charge. So you have to click the button to charge your phone. But random challenges will appear that are themed after the meme. So it might pop up with, what do you know? And if you know
mine said forced to cook. I had to force to cook something. Oh yeah, what do you know? Select the correct option below. Dancing with ghosts, cooking, gaming, practicing interpretive screening, interdimensional yoga.
According to me, you know nothing. You better get more. You better click more.
God,
because the only thing you know is McDonald's, Gavin. You have to click McDonald's.
I see it. I got it. I clicked it. Okay, I'm good. Oh, this is really fun, Cav. I like this idea. Like it's basically, so you've basically vibe coded a cookie clicker with a bunch of really interesting cultural meme stuff. So let's talk quickly about what went into this, because the game itself is super fun, but I could also see somebody like seeing this and being like, oh, I see that thing. I would want to make one about like, I want to make one about Bob in my office, who's always doing the dumb stuff, right? Because that is the world we're talking about. We talked about how Suno allows you to make those songs about your friends. Yeah. Now you're able to like make a game about your friends. So tell us how you did this.
Yeah. So here's what's nutty. I mean, I fed it the meme itself, the text, and I explained the meme, right?
Yeah.
And then I said, I want to make a series of mini games. I did give it ideas for what some of the mini games could be, like boxes that float around, blah, blah, blah. I explained the core concept of the game. There is a boss battle that appears in the game. If you manage to play it for a minute and like 15 seconds, a boss battle will appear. And I gave it some ideas for that. But then, Gavin, the most insane part is that I said, use emojis for graphics, so I don't have to generate any graphics.
Yeah.
I want you to use programmatic sound, so there are weird sound effects in the game.
It
and
sounds
like
pretty good, actually,
especially for the boss battle. Yeah, Claude came up with all of that. And the original version of I said, go with like Windows 3.1 meets a GeoCities website, have fun, go nuts. Wow. The original version of the game worked. You know, I had to go back and forth with it and say, okay, fix this, fix that. There's a bug here. This doesn't work. It coded everything. And then eventually I said, this isn't crazy enough. Go nuts. go wild, have a good time. And when you get to the boss battle, it's like full on crazy, like things slamming on the screen, full animations, wild sound effects. It's actually like, what was so bizarre is that like I, as the coder, as the creator of the game, had no idea what it even was. And I got to be surprised every time I would run this thing when it would actually
amazing.
work. It surprised me. It wrote all of the text. It wrote all of the descriptions. There's a mini game where you have to say like, what do you know? And you have to click more until you find McDonald's, because that's all you know is McDonald's. And it wrote all of the weird like astral yoga and like you only know vegan yogurt.
It wrote all those on its own?
All of that. It did all of the
Wow.
animations. It made all of the sound effects. So it was a weird kind of vibe coded game that I'll make it available. Like it's hosted publicly now, so I'll just make it available.
That's
The
so
link will be in
awesome.
our
People
show
to try
notes.
it. How much time would you say you put into it? Like, I'm just curious. I know this is not trying to hype anything up, but I'm just curious to know, and people at home might want to know, is like, what did this take kind of start to finish?
Too much time. It was about 3.5 hours start to finish.
Okay. So that's not nothing, right? But also like it's literally half of a workday, right? For
like,
a game that is valuable in some form, right? To somebody.
Well, I'll ask this, Gavin. Without AI, could you make this game?
Oh, without AI, absolutely not, right?
Me
There's
neither.
no way I can make that game.
No way. No way. And even with AI, I have a vague understanding of how the systems work. Like that is so like to go, it took 3 hours. Yeah, I spent a little too much time on the dumb game.
Yeah.
But the fact that it could be made is insane. And again, after everything you and I have talked about for the last, Lord knows how long this episode will be once cut down. Like everybody should know, like, it is possible. You can do it. You might have to slam your head against the keyboard for a few hours, but you can make something. And by the way, 6 months from now, gonna be even easier.
Yeah, like literally, this comes out on Thursday morning. If you have a normal job, which I'm sure most of you people do, like spend 3 to 5 hours on this Saturday. Try this. Like it is. There's a lot of new ways to look at this. Matthew Berman, who's a great YouTuber, has a very good video that he talks about vibe coding a game from scratch. And like, I also want to shout out Andrew Chen, who runs the A16Z VC fund. Wrote a really awesome long newsletter on Substack, but it's free to look at, where it talks about how vibe coding might change the games business. Also, it talks about and has some examples of good vibe coded games. Really worth looking at that. So if you have a few seconds, read that first, watch Matthew's video first, and then just dive in, because it is not impossible. Like to Kevin's point, Kevin is technical, but I know what he did here, and I can do this too. The only hard part, it probably ends up being the deploying part, but even that you can just ask Claude about. And so
I literally asked ChatGPT what would be, I told it to go browse the web and find me the best, cheapest services to deploy something like this. I'm on a $5 free trial of a service called Railway, which makes it
amazing.
one click to deploy. And that's what you're seeing right now. So
that's crazy.
It's really, it's a wild time. There's never been a better time to be a quote unquote creative, because if you look at this meme and maybe you're offended, or maybe you're just like rolling your eyes because you're like, wow, you wasted 3 hours on this. It's like, well, but what can you make? What do you want to make? And I do. Please make something and share it with us in the Discord. Do way better. Make it way better. Make your own graphics. Make your own sound effects. Take the time and care. But like, you will gain so much from just interacting with these new tools. This is the future. So hop on board the old train. Choo choo.
Choo choo, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.